Well, you can do all those things and so much more. Just grab a seat in the chair or the floor. Sit back, relax, recline. While she drops another casual line. You're tuned into Casually Molly with Molly and Bergie.
Welcome back to the Casually Molly podcast. I am your host, Molly Ambergy. For our returning listeners, thank you so much for tuning in again. For anybody that's new to the podcast, I am a comedian and playwright based in St. Louis, Missouri. And every other week, we interview comedians, entertainers, chefs, anybody just with an interesting story, but not just anybody today, because he is a Virginia-born and Maryland-raised country musician. Give it up for Mark Taylor, everybody. Yes.
Much for having me on.
Absolutely. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how your day's been going?
Well, the pollen's terrible. I'm in North Carolina right now, and apparently, so I'm from Baltimore originally, but apparently I missed the wave of like when I came down here to college. We just get slammed with pollen like 3 months earlier than it seems like everyone else does. So, the pollen's a mess right now. My car's covered. I just got it washed yesterday, but other than that, pretty good. My sinuses want to explode, but other than that, it's been a pretty regular case of the Mondays for college, but I'm here and my day got so much better seeing you guys.
Oh, no, that's what I was about to say, Mark. It made my day. You didn't see this, which is the power of editing and having a great tech team over at Midcoast Media. But Mark was very patient. Tonight, I am recording from my dining room. He's at college, which, by the way, congratulations. You graduate in 3 weeks. Is that correct?
That's right. Thank you so much. Graduate from Wake Forest University over here in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. But it's been a crazy 4 years, but finally finishing up May 16th, about 3 weeks, something like that.
Oh, there you go. Okay. Yeah. I was about to say it was like 3, 4, 2, anyway, it's an accomplishment. So I appreciate it. So I'm really excited to talk with you. Speaking of your music, two of the songs that I've been introduced by Nicole Zeller from Brickshore Media. The one of them is I'm Down, and then the other one is Buzzed on a Boat, which we will hear later. I wanted to tell you, I know I said this a little bit earlier, but for the listeners, you have a really beautiful voice. It looks like on your website, your style has blending between country, rock, and pop. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and what got you into those genres?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's kind of a weird and funny story how I got all over the place, but I started when I was 5 or 6 years old. I picked up a guitar for the first time, and my dad was playing in a classic rock cover band. So I would get up on stage with him and, play this guitar that was bigger than me up on stage with my dad. And, from there, I just really found a love for it. And then, I turned 12 or 13 years old and realized that I could make some money doing this. So I played in my first ever show when I was like 13 years old, something like that. And it was at my local pool for $50 for 4 hours. And I thought I made $1 million. And I never looked back. My parents helped me carry all my stuff into the venue. Fast forward to I'm 22 now. I've played over 1,000 live shows all over the world, opening up for folks like Big and Rich and Wiz Khalifa, Matt Dillon, and some other just really amazing artists. And it's been really cool. But, I started, seriously considering this as a career. In high school, I was playing in garage bands and, anyone that would let me play guitar and sing for them. So, I've been in every classic rock cover band. I've been in alternative rock cover bands. I was in a touring jazz band for a while. I was a Frank Sinatra impersonator for a little while in a big band. I did full country band stuff, kind of everything in between. And then I kind of settled on country music. But I've been around music for a while, seriously for the last 9 or 10 years. And I've just really loved all of it. But my musical influences have been shaped with kind of all of the music I've been a part of.
Oh my gosh, I had no idea. First of all, I knew because I had read on your website, of course, which everybody should check out, marktaylorofficial.net. It is so impressive. I grew up listening to Big and Rich. So when I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh. And then of course, like Wiz Khalifa, that's amazing. And then obviously these experiences propelling you into country music. What was it like kind of working with, or not kind of, you actually worked with probably some of your childhood heroes. What was it like meeting them in person?
Surreal. I mean, just I've been obviously, and most country music fans have been a big fan of Big and Rich forever. But It was cool because I grew up listening to Lone Star, and that was John Rich's first band. And then, they kind of came up and he started the Big and Rich deal. And it was wild. I mean, I found out for that performance, I found out 72 hours maybe ahead of time that they needed someone to open for them. And I was down here at college, and the gentleman called me and said, if you can get to Baltimore now, you got to leave today. You got to come up here. We got to do a bunch of stuff. You can open for him. I'm like, great. Just packed up my stuff in my car and drove 6.5 hours north without knowing any details whatsoever. They just said, come. I said, okay, I'll be there. So we went up, and they were just the most gracious guys in the world. They were just so nice, and we still, their management team and I still stay in touch every once in a while. But they were such great guys. We were just hanging out, having a great time, and having dinner, and having a couple beers and stuff like that, and just really getting to know each other. But they were just really awesome, and that was kind of my first big time opening shot for anyone. So that was really kind of cool for me to look around and be like, oh my God, it's just me up here and they're coming up next. I got to be the ones that introduced him. Like it was the coolest thing in the world. And, something that I didn't know was going to happen because the phone call was just so surreal. I was like, big and who? And they're like, Big and Rich. I'm like, oh my God, that's actually who we're talking. Okay. Yeah. I know who they are. Don't worry. And, I went up, but it was, just the coolest thing in the world. And I've had the good fortune of being able to, meet a lot of my childhood heroes over the last, particularly 3 or 4 years here. And especially in country music for me, I just get so giddy every time I walk around some of these people. And it's really hard for me to contain. But it's so much fun. I literally would not trade this job for the world.
No, that is so cool. I had no idea that you kind of just had to drop everything and then all of a sudden be like, okay, I got to get there, which is amazing. What were the songs? Did you play like cover songs for them? Did you play original songs? What was your style?
It was a mix of both, which was really fun. They let me kind of play some of my stuff. Covered a couple Brett Young tunes, and then I was talking to Brett a couple months ago about it, and he was like, "Oh, that's awesome! Thank you so much." But it was kind of a mix of everything from everything from country to a little bit of pop, a little bit of rock, and some of my stuff as well. But at that time, we didn't really have a ton of music out, so it was really they really called me on a whim. I should not have been able to do this, but they called me up and they trusted me with it, and they said, "If you can put a show together, you can have the spot." I was like, "Great!" So. We threw a couple of the songs. Ironically, I'm Down and Buzzed on a Boat were on that set list, and we played a couple other ones as well. But again, just such a surreal experience, and just it was amazing getting to see how people that have really been successful in the industry get to do it every day.
Oh, absolutely. And it obviously gives you like such a warm feeling in your heart as well, knowing that even though Big and Rich is very famous and stuff, and, being around that, at the end of the day, everybody shares that love for music. So I'm really happy that you got to experience that. So thank you so much for sharing that story. I know you had mentioned too, you are always around your father, doing music. It mentions on your website, you said, I grew up playing alongside my biggest musical influence, my father. So it was a classic rock cover band that you were playing a part of. That's really awesome.
Super fun. He just, and they get up and they still do it. I mean, to this day. So they probably started when I was 5 or 6 and I'm 22 now. So it's at least 15 or so years they've been doing this. But, they get up together once a month and it's, 4 or 5 guys and they get up and they play for beer money and they have a great time. They just love to be together. And, they play the same 2 or 3 local bars in Baltimore. And it's the same crowd that comes out. And it's always fun. There's always just a million people around hanging out till all hours of the night. But, that's how he, has done it for a long time. And he's really enjoyed it. And, from the time I was 2, he was cutting down guitars and building me guitars that were just, yay big so I could hold it in my hands and strum nonsense. And then finally by, 4 or 5, he's showing me how to play chords. And by 5 or 6, I'm playing up with him. And there's a picture of me somewhere on my Instagram page. I don't know if I took it down or not, but I was literally 6 years old and the guitar is 3 times the size of me. And I'm wearing a green tie-dye shirt with Crocs and with a bowl cut around it here. And it is that needs to be an album cover for something one day. I don't even care what it is, but it is the funniest picture in the world. But yeah, I mean, he really inspired me. I mean, that's the music I grew up on, old Eagles records and old Queen records. And my grandfather actually put a jukebox. My parents bought my grandparents' house. He left an old jukebox from 79 or 80 in my basement with the original 45s in it. So, everything from Journey to Elton John to the Eagles. And I just sit down there for hours and click the next button. And that's how I learned to play music at first, was just listening to these old records, and you hear the scratches and you hear the imperfections from the vinyl. And that's why I'm such a big, kind of analog and vinyl guy to this day. But, it was a really cool upbringing, and not one that many people can kind of say, oh, I grew up, in this day and age on a lot of those kind of old classic records. But, that's the first record I ever listened to is Desperado for the Eagles, and all the way through I can, that's one of my favorite records of all time, and I'm a huge Eagles fan. But yeah, that's kind of the upbringing, but that's how it got started, I would say.
All right, that's awesome. No, I when I got engaged, we actually went to a classic rock cover band concert. So I was like, I'm really intrigued about this, and I love classic rock too. We've had a lot of really cool people who have been interested in that. But speaking of your beginning, now you're here. What I loved about your voice and even your writing, which really surprises me that you're 22, is that there's such and I mean this in the most respectful and loving way, there's such a maturity about your writing and your voice. What's your, I guess, a lot of different musicians will say this differently, but what's your style per se, or what is your way of being able to sit down and write your own music?
Absolutely. I've been really blessed over the last year and a half to have just some of the best co-writers in the industry work with me, which has been really fun. And the ironic part is the record that's out right now, I want to say I wrote by myself for all but 2 of those. So that was really kind of me really developing my craft. And there's a lot of songs. The oldest song is 5 or 6 years old on that thing. And then there are some of them, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. Buzzed on a Boat, I wrote 3 days before the album came out. So it's a whole weird kind of conglomerate of music for that. But, for me, it's a lot of just trying to connect with people and connect with myself, which is often the hardest thing because, like you said, I am 22. So I haven't seen a lot of things personally yet. But that's when I really lean on those co-writers because I feel like I can say something. It may not be what everyone else is thinking, but that's where I find my advantage necessarily because the whole point of music and writing music, and especially in country music, you want to take that connection and say it differently, take that feeling and say it in a different way that means something. So that's why I feel like a lot of, co-writers and I get along really well is because, they bring a lot of these experiences to the table and I'm trying to think of these new and fresh and different ways to say something. And, that's honestly what we did with Amy Stewart, who wrote the song Knock on Wood. I just wrote her latest single. It's out on radio right now, Perfectly Beautiful. So that was another way for her, coming out of this kind of period in her life that she wanted to totally shift. And she came to us and for the people in the publishing company and said, we really want to do something different, something that hasn't been said before, and the kind of this uplifting anthem. And, we wrote the song in about 2.5 hours, Perfectly Beautiful. And it went over to her and she absolutely loved it right away and changed a few things here. And now it's out to radio. So it's that totally fresh and new way of saying things. Cause I haven't heard the term perfectly beautiful before. But it's not something that's often said, but now that you kind of get using it a little bit more, you're like, okay, that's definitely something someone could say. And that's, in my opinion, why I love that song so much. But for me, it's all about saying something fresh and a new spin on something that no one's ever heard before. But yeah, that's kind of how I like to do things. I'm kind of neurotic when it comes to writing. So, there's certain days that I'll do it at specific times. I got to be in this whatever spot. I get inspired in different ways, but it's super fun. And like I said, I owe a lot of it to my co-writers. I have some of the best co-writers in the industry, and I would not trade those relationships for the world.
Oh, I love that. And Perfectly Beautiful. I'm going to say that all the time now. I got to look up this song. I can't wait. Speaking of your music, Buzzed on a Boat, we're going to play it at the end of the episode, obviously, for anybody that's listening or watching, of course. But I'll ask you, what was the story behind writing that song?
That song was hilarious. So I actually didn't come up with the title to that. Obviously, everyone knows I'm Drunk on a Plane is a very popular commercial country song. And, my mom and my sister during quarantine, there were 5 of us in the house and my dog. Up in Baltimore. Everyone got sent home from colleges, wherever. We were all locked in this house, like everyone pretty much was. And the reason this whole record happened, the record I put out back in, I think it's October now, gosh. But I wrote that record because I was so sick and tired of being around my family and there was literally nothing else to do. So I was like, I got to do something. And my mom and my sister had been bugging me for months and months and months and months and months. Write a song called Buzzed on a Boat. That'd be hilarious. Oh, it'd be so funny. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Finally, we are sitting on a beach between Christmas and New Year's in Florida, visiting some friends down in the southwest part of Florida. And my sister looks at me, and I had had a few beverages at this point, and she looks over at me and goes, so I guess you're not talented enough to write a song called Buzzed on a Boat, huh? And when your, 18 months younger than you sister looks at you and goes, I guess you're not good enough, you're going to turn around and go, hell yes, I am. So I sat on the beach with nothing. I had not even a piano app on my phone. I just wrote notes. And in my mind, I was composing the song. So I knew what key I wanted to do it in. I knew what chord progression I wanted. I just started writing the lyrics down. And I remember I sat there and I said, here, my sister's name is Caroline. Here, Caroline, I did it. Look at this. And I showed it to her. She goes, all right, it's probably terrible. Play it for me later. And we totally forgot about it. So then 3 months later, I'm sitting in this very chair right now in a very boring class at Wake, and I won't out which one it was, but it's very boring. And I'm sitting there like, I do not want to be here right now. So I'm just aimlessly scrolling through my phone because I'm bored out of my freaking mind. I stumble across a song called Buzzed on a Boat that I had totally forgotten about. And the record was set to come out in a little while. We had our singles picked, like it was all ready to go. And I remember opening this notes app and I'm reading it and I'm like, what is this song? I have no idea what the heck this is. And, I started kind of playing the chords that I had written. I have a piano in front of me. So I'm sitting here kind of doing this on the piano. I'm like, well, this isn't half bad. And then I kept going and I'm like, all right, maybe we got something here. And I sent it over to my producer and he was like, this is the single, we're recording it today. I was like, okay. So he goes and he does all the tracks for it. I tracked the vocals here that day. A couple days later, Buzzed on a Boat's done. Sent it over to my publicist, Nicole, who was doing a lot of the stuff for the album. She was like, that's the single. That's the first one. I'm like, all right. Oh, lo and behold, I believe it was May 28th, which is almost a year, but 11 months ago, something like that. We put out Buzzed on a Boat, a song that I had written and totally forgot about, and it did super well. And it was so cool to see, all the press behind the release and all the drama. It was so cool to see all that stuff come out. But yeah, I mean, the moral of that story is that write stuff down on your phone, because I had totally forgotten about that. And my mom and my sister to this day will not let me forget that they came up with the title to that song. So credit to that.
And yeah, shout out to Mark's mom and sister. This interview would not be possible without them then, since we're playing Buzzed on a Boat at the end of this interview. I love it. Well, obviously the press, we're on board with it. But I got to ask you, are your mom and your sister, are they fans of the song? Are they happy with the outcome of it?
Oh, they love it. The minute it came out, and maybe that's just them telling me because I'm related to them, but they at least they tell me they love it. So, take that with a grain of salt, if you will. But it's a super fun song. And that, honestly, right now, we're trying to push it a little bit for a comeback just because it did really well the first time. And, I'm in North Carolina right now. It's freaking hot down here right now. So the only thing I want to go do is get buzzed on a boat. So I'm like, why not push this again? So that's what we're doing, a little bit of a push right now to see if we can get some folks to, get buzzed on a boat with our song. But yeah, my parents love that song. My sister loves that song. So it's been really cool.
Awesome. Well, now I'm inspired. Well, we were going to play I'm Down, which everybody should still listen to. And I'm about to ask you about that one in a second. But then Nicole literally today was like, hey, can we actually do Buzzed on a Boat because it's getting towards summer? And we were all like, okay, yeah, sure. And I listened to it. And I was like, love this song too. So this will work just fine. Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course. But yeah, speaking of I'm Down, what I loved about that song, and we'll talk about the story behind that as well, you have an acoustic version of that song too. What made you decide, I guess, this is an interesting question in the sense of that, what makes you decide as an artist when to maybe take a song? Because I know in studio you can add different background music and things like that. What makes you decide that you want to play a song acoustically?
Sure. Well, the cool part about I'm Down, and I won't give too much of the story away first, but that song was actually my first top 20. So there was a country chart that went all the way up to number 11 on. So that song absolutely soared up and it was quick. So we were like, all right, we got to do something with this. And the momentum was so good that, sitting down with my team, we just kind of sat there and we were like, we need to do something. What can we do? And Nicole had been pitching this idea. Let's do an acoustic single for so long. And finally I was like, all right, we're going to do it. And she was like, okay, great. So then we jumped in the studio with Leland Grant down there in Nashville, who's done, Chris Young, Dan and Shay, Rachel Bradshaw, he's done everyone. And he and I got together and we kind of figured out how we wanted to arrange it. I was only in town for like 24 hours. So we had to finish it that day. And we kind of sat down and did it. But the cool part about doing an acoustic version is that it's different from the original version, which was very intentional. So we wanted to kind of add some different elements to it, not just in the production side of it, because obviously we stripped everything down and there's no electric guitars, it's just acoustic guitars, a little bit of piano, a little bit of a box drum, something like that. But, we added different harmonies, we added different background parts, we added, different words in some places to make it a little bit more fresh, different vocal stuff throughout the whole thing. So it was cool because fans got to see a different side, because a lot of, you listen to my songs and it's like, okay, this kid, he's going to get up there with a full band. It's going to be this kind of pop country show, whatever. But there's a lot more to that song than that. And Leland did an incredible job bringing all of that out in the production of the I'm Down acoustic version. But, I'm in love with the first version too. Simon Reed, my first producer, he really killed it with that first version of I'm Down as well. But yeah, it's just trying to give the fans something a little bit extra, something a little bit more. And the fans love that one too. So that was really, really fun for us.
Yeah, I was going to say I loved both versions because I heard the one that wasn't acoustic, obviously the non-acoustic first. And then when I heard the acoustic, what I liked about it, it also shows another side of you. There's always something about just having a guitar and going to the roots of, country music. So I really appreciate you showing both sides of you. And as a consumer of music, it's always cool to get to learn about an artist on, different levels of interest and variety, which, speaking of variety, you have, like we mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, you've worked with some really big names. One I really am interested in learning about is you worked with Wiz Khalifa, who's very much known for rap. What was it like working with a different genre? I know you've had, like you said, you worked with a jazz band and you done work with about Frank Sinatra music and whatnot. What was it like working with a genre that wasn't necessarily what you do on a regular basis?
It was totally a different feel, and it was totally different crowd, totally different feel, totally different everything. But that was one where intentionally I sat down and said, I want to do a stripped down acoustic show. I was the act before him on a pretty big lineup. And, I was like, I want to do this. And I want to see what happens, because this is not the opportunity that I thought. It's whenever you hear, oh, you're opening act, like, okay, great, sign me up. And then, you kind of see, you're like, Wiz Khalifa. Okay, that's totally different from what I'm used to. So still great music, and it was still an awesome show. But, that was really cool for me because the fans appreciated it more that I was there with the guitar and I sat down and I played my music. I played a couple covers. I don't know what covers I played, but played a bunch of the stuff off my latest record. And it was really cool because it was a different appreciation. I wasn't trying to, be something that I wasn't up on that stage, because that's so easy to do. You're not the rap and country crowd have mixed more recently, but at this time it happened, not really. So, it was kind of two different crowds, and we had some country people there, some rap people there, and it was cool because everyone appreciated the music, which was just an awesome feeling all the way around. But that was definitely really cool. Kind of that, and that's something too that I really enjoy, is that I don't come from necessarily a strictly country background or a strictly rock or a strictly pop. So to have some different influences and different experiences across the board was something that I really value in my music. I mean, if you listen to that record we put out, there's some hard rock stuff on there. There's some straight up country stuff on there, and there's some pop stuff. It's a conglomerate of stuff. And that was, again, very intentional. But that was definitely a really cool experience. Not one that I ever thought was going to happen. If you had told me that one of my first opening gigs would be for Wiz Khalifa, and the first cut I ever had was with Amy Stewart, who wrote Knock on Wood in the 70s, I'd tell you you're lying. But, it's all incredible opportunities all the way around. And I really enjoyed, having that kind of diverse, just options all around the community and people that I get to work with. It's been really, really cool.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that you talked about the authenticity of that, because it's very easy, being in comedy, sometimes and I've been guilty of it, where you'll try to walk into a room and you want to relate to people and you want people to understand you, but just kind of, I hate to use the cliche, like being yourself, but just doing that and having people see what your artistry is and what you want to bring to the table, even if it's a crowd you're not necessarily familiar with, you become familiar on a different level of familiarity. So I really respect you for always trying out something new and having a variety of music genres in your, different artistry and choreography of your music. What I'll ask you though, you, speaking of variety, you were born in Virginia, you were raised in Maryland. Now you're on this big move to Nashville. What made you decide once you graduated from college, or I'm making the move to Nashville, this is the time for me to go? Yeah,
I mean, the cool part was I had always been, in the back of my mind, it's always been there. But the plan originally was to go to law school. So I'm at Wake Forest. I had all the basically, a pre-law track, whatever, communication major. We feed into a lot of law schools. I was like, this is for me. This is what I want to do. I took a law internship in the music industry, and they asked me to memorize parts of the Copyright Act. And I went home and I said, I can't do this. Are you kidding me? This is awful. I don't like reading to begin with. What part of me ever wanted to be a lawyer? After literally day one of the internship, I went up to my boss and I was like, listen, I hate to be that guy, and I'm so sorry. I don't like this. I don't want to spend a summer doing this. And he said, that's all right. He goes, we didn't think you were lawyer material anyway. Let's find you something else. Said, all right. So he let me stay on. And the ironic part is now I still work for them in a production setting. So I help out with a lot of their production for their record label and stuff like that. But, the move to Nashville was inspired that there were a few guys that had invited me down to Nashville. And I remember sitting out at Dark Horse Studios, which is Dolly Parton's studio in Franklin, Tennessee. And I was sitting on this couch overlooking this just beautiful farm. And it was a picture perfect June day. It was like June 9th or something like that. And I remember sitting there very vividly being like, all right, this is happening. This is for me. And just having kind of experiences like that where you're like, this is where you need to be to make it. Because that's the hardest thing. It's like, everyone's good in Nashville. Everyone's good. And the worst person in Nashville is still good. That's what people don't get is you walk into a McDonald's and you'll see some guy standing there who's probably a better singer than you. And that it takes a lot to realize, because I came from a Baltimore market where I kind of was raised in music, particularly because I was gigging every day for pretty much 6.5, 7 years there. And I was playing over 1,000 live shows there. So I got so used to being, one of 3 country guys in Baltimore. And that's kind of what my shtick was for a while. And it just started to happen that way. And after a while, I was like, well, I want to keep going up, but I don't know where to go from here. So the move obviously there was Nashville, because that's where country music is. And that's where the best of the best are. And I'm really excited. It's going to be great. At beginning of June, I'm going to move down there, and we're getting some, shows and festivals together right now. But it's just, it's a big and scary move, I will say, trying to uplift myself all the way halfway across the country again after I did it once already for college. Just takes a lot of logistical things to do. So I'm very appreciative of my team for that. But, I can't wait. It's going to be so much fun, and I have so much to look forward to down there, and it's going to be great, but you just got to be there. I mean, that's the big thing. You can't, you'll walk into a bar and you'll see all these different people. I walked into a bar 3 months ago and was hanging out with Brett Young right after the show. So it's stuff like that where you're like, you can't do that really anywhere else. I would not have had that experience with Brett if I'm sitting on my couch in North Carolina, right? So it's situations like that where you never know who you're going to bump into. I've bumped into more artists and writers standing at the urinal in the bathroom, in the men's room, than anywhere else. And it's the funniest thing in the world, but then you get talking for a little while. Oh, I'm a writer, I'm a singer, whatever. And then you're writing together. But it's the funniest thing in the world, but you just got to be there. And that's the reason for the move down there, is so I can hopefully make it in this crazy industry. And, I just cannot wait to be there full time.
Oh, I am so excited for you. And that it's so true. Yeah. Oh, of course. It's so true that, especially in, the entertainment industry, and really specifically in the music industry, you really have to be present, just because it's just like what you said. There's so many networking and moments. That's what I'm trying to say here, where you're just standing or you're sitting next to someone. It's the same thing like in New York or LA or Chicago. But I know Nashville is definitely the hub for country. So we just can't wait to see what's next in the career of Mark Taylor. I can't wait. So
I'm excited too, for the record. Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Which, speaking of, what's next, I know you're moving to Nashville, but what should, our listeners and viewers expect from, any future projects or touring or anything coming up that you think we should know about?
Yeah, we're getting lots of tour dates on the books right now, kind of all over the country, which is going to be really exciting. It'll take a little bit of time for me to kind of get fully situated in Nashville. So there's a couple of things like, where am I going to live? We're still we're getting all that stuff squared away. But lots of new music. We are writing. My writers and everyone's been writing every freaking day, and it's awesome. And we got a lot of really, really cool stuff coming. Trying to think of what else I can share. We got a ton of new music, not in the immediate future, but down the line a little bit. A lot of really fun writes, a lot of really fun shows too. Hopefully a couple festivals in there. Definitely some tour dates, especially if you're listening in the Tennessee, Kentucky, Maryland, Delaware, Virginia, South Carolina, North Carolina area like that, you'll be seeing me at some point. So it's just going to be hitting the ground running. I mean, trying to write absolutely as much as I can. And, on the weekends, I'll be on trips kind of out of Nashville doing my thing on tour. And, with the band, I'm just so excited for that. It's going to be fun. But yeah, I mean, it's a really exciting time to be in Nashville. It seems like everyone and their mother is moving there. So it's a really thriving place. The rent is a thing, and that's definitely something that, because everyone's moving there, the rent is a thing. But no, I mean, other than that, it's the perfect place to be, and I just can't wait to be down there full time. But lots of fun stuff. Stay tuned to the Instagram though. That's where you'll find all that fun stuff.
Absolutely. Can we pop up Mark's Instagram handle real quick? All right. For those who are watching on YouTube or on Facebook, it is at Mark_acoustic. And then, of course, you can always visit Mark's website, marktaynorofficial.net. I just read everything about him, saw all his music. Hit some favorites on Spotify. Give this man, just some love here. The last thing I'll ask you, we always ask everybody at the end of the episode, what casual advice would you give? Which I really would love to know. What is some casual advice maybe you would give yourself that you maybe know now that you didn't know back then? I know, like you said, I'm 22. I still have to see things, but I feel like you're a very mature 22-year-old. You're very worldly. You've got a lot, going for you. But what would you maybe tell yourself pursuing the music industry that you know now that maybe you didn't know then?
There was a writer, and every time I have to figure out who told me this, because there's 3 guys that I think it was, and I can never remember who actually said it. I want to say it was Matt Roy. I don't know that to be certain, but he wrote Done for Chris Janson, a couple of Kane Brown songs. He's done very well for himself. But he was the one, we were having coffee one day, and I think it's him. But he looked over at me and he said, what you absolutely need to do is keep your head straight. He goes, you're going to think it's a race. And if you are turning your head left and turning your head right, the camera's switched, so I don't know which way I'm actually going. But left and right, whatever way the camera is oriented, you're going to get distracted and someone's going to pull in front of you. And that's the big thing for me. Was for a while I was trying to be other things. I was trying to be the next so-and-so. I was trying to do this, trying to do that, whatever. But when the art got good for me is when I started being myself the most. And I know we had already talked about this, but just if you keep driving straight, you're going to get there. We get so distracted. Oh, what's so-and-so doing on TikTok? How many views monthly does so-and-so have? Or how many monthly Spotify listeners, whatever. Yes, that stuff matters a little bit, but at the end of the day, we're in this for the long haul. Nashville's a 10-year town. It doesn't happen on day 1. It doesn't happen on day 2. It doesn't happen on day 102, whatever. That's, for me, and that's what I would probably tell even myself a year ago, because it's a crazy town. Jason Aldean's crazy town full of neon dreams. It's so true. And it's just, you have to be willing to keep your head straight and not get distracted by what's going on around you. And it is the hardest thing to do. But I ain't saying I'm that good at it either. But what I am saying that I try to practice that every day. And that's the casual advice I will give to all of you. Stay in your lane.
I love that.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, what did you say? I think we lost that last part. You said stay in your lane, and then what was the...
Keep staying in that lane and just keep driving forward, and you will get to where you want to be.
Absolutely. I definitely have the same advice. My mom is originally from Queens, New York. And, growing up, and being in theater was kind of the same thing. My mom's like, be like one of the horses that's in Central Park. It's got the blinders on and it's just looking straight ahead. And that's exactly what you need to do. And rather than being somebody else, you're the first Mark Taylor, official.net. We should all look that up. So.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, yes, Mark, I know you've got to go, but this has been absolutely lovely. Thank you so much for sitting and taking the time out to talk to me.
Thanks for having me on. This is so much fun. I can't wait to see what other episodes, what other fun people you bring on here. It's been such a pleasure. I cannot.
Oh, no, thank you so much. Just make sure, again, to follow at Mark_acoustic. Make sure that you look up all his music. I was streaming it on Spotify today. And of course, always make sure that you follow at the Casually Molly podcast. Just make sure you listen to all the episodes, share it, share Mark's episode, just because we're going to play his song Buzzed on a Boat in just a second. But what we always say, now that our episode is casually ended, Mark, what are you going to casually do now that we've ended our interview?
I get to go write a casual paper for a casual final I have tomorrow. So that's going to be very fun. My last college final / presentation is at 11 a.m. So I am so excited to go sit with my group and write a 10-page paper tonight. Cannot wait.
All right. And on that note, everybody, thank you. Thank you so much. We're going to let Mark write his paper so he can pass and get to Nashville. And for all of us, we're going to listen to Buzzed on a Boat. Let's do this. Bye, Mark.
Bye. Thanks so much.
Margaritaville blasting through the cracking speakers. Cold Bud Light dripping in my hand. Got them girls going crazy when I rev the engine. Damn, I wish the time on the water would never end. Shades on, looking down at my own reflection. Fades to the left and to the right is all we see. Sun beating down harder than I've ever seen it. Someone come on over, shotgun and be with me. I'm buzzed on a boat, out on the water, drinking all day. Ain't nothing better than my girl working on a tan while I'm doing shots with a band. My tide's coming in, my mind's going out. Fruity drinks pouring, there ain't no doubt. We got so much booze we can hardly float. I'm getting buzzed on a boat. Getting buzzed on a boat. Through a no-wake zone. That's the fastest way to take us from home. Wind in my face, how I miss this place. I hope it never ends. We'll be swimming with the fishes after one more drink. We gotta keep moving so we keep from sinking. Out the son of a sailor, I think it's fair to say. Let's crack open a cold. And here's to today. I'm getting buzzed on a boat, out on the water, drinking all day. Ain't nothing better than my girl working on a tan while I'm doing shots with a band. Tide's coming in, my mind's going out. Fruity drinks pouring, there ain't no doubt. We got so much booze we can hardly float. Getting buzzed on a boat. Getting buzzed on a boat. On a boat, out on the water, drinking all day. Ain't nothing better than my girl working on a tan while I'm doing shots with the band. Come on. Tide's coming in, my mind's going out. Fruity drinks pouring, there ain't no doubt. We got so much booze, can hardly flow.